most people are familiar with Saturday Night Slam Masters, a pretty popular game at the time, but in this episode we'll be looking specifically into the Japanese version of the game. Now, Saturday Night Slam Masters is a pretty cool name, appealing to Western fans by evoking the image of the WWF and Saturday Night's main event. But the Japanese name is so perfectly Japanese that it reaches a new level of awesome. Behold, Muscle Bomber, the Body Explosion. That's not a translation, by the way, it's the actual name in Japanese. Just look at the front covers for the North American and the Japanese releases. It tells you just about all you need to know for the marketing and the audience for pro wrestling in each region at the time. Once you pop the game into your SNES, the game is largely the same, however. The first thing that I noticed was a wave of nostalgia that hit me, but not for this game. Saturday Night Slam Masters is considered by many in the Americas to be a classic, but over in Europe, where I'm from, the game wasn't that common in my experience. I've never come across it in the
Smackdown Mall,
but it's on eBay, so I know that European cartridges exist. No, the nostalgia I immediately experienced was for another game, Street Fighter II. The menus are very similar, as are the character selection screens, sound effects, and presentation. Now this isn't a complaint in the slightest. Capcom made both games, so if it works, why fix it? But it's like breaking up with a girl only to start dating a new girl who looks the same. There's a strange familiarity to be found here. The characters are your standard fighting game cast, to be honest, but they've all been given a pro wrestling feel, which is nice. Now the character names differ between the versions, so that must mean it's time to play...
Don't hate the player, hate the game!
In this game, we're going to look at all of the characters' names in both Saturday Night Slam Masters and Muscle Bomber to decide which version has the better names. First up, we have Mike Macho Haga, who's guest starring from the Final Fight series. He's the only character to have the same name in both versions, so nobody gets any points here. Our first real contender is Biff Slamkovich versus Alexei Zalazov. This one has got to go to the Americans. Who doesn't love a bit of Russian wordplay? Next is Gunlock versus Lucky Colt. Aside from both sounding like rejected names for Revolver Ocelot, both of these are pretty good. Lucky Colt takes this one for Japan though. Next, the Great Muto, the Great Oni versus the Mysterious Budo. The Great Oni is a name that I'm surprised hasn't been taken previously, as it's a rad name, Oni meaning demon in Japanese. The Mysterious Budo doesn't sound as cool, and plus, if you know Japanese, it sounds like his name is a mysterious grape. I'm assuming that Budo refers to the way of the samurai, however, and not the delicious fruit. Anyway, America scores. Alexander the Greater versus Sheep the Royal. Both pretty weird names for a character based on Big Van Vader. I get that Alexander the Greater is a play on Alexander the Great, but spelling it that way makes him sound like a food prepper. Sheep the Royal wins this one on its sheer weirdness. King Rasta versus Missing IQ Gomez. Seemingly the love child of Blanca from Street Fighter and Bruiser Brody, nothing really screams Rastafarian about this guy. Missing IQ Gomez sounds more appropriate for a guy supposedly raised by apes. Japan takes the point. Titanic Tim versus Titan the Great. This is a no-brainer. Whilst Titan the Great sounds like an actual Japanese pro wrestling name, Titanic Tim is a fantastic gimmick name for a big guy. Rumor is he's based on Giant Baba too. Titanic Tim takes the W here. El Stingray versus El Stinger. Potentially based on Lizmark, there's not much between these two names. I'll give it to El Stingray though, as El Stinger sounds like the non-union Mexican equivalent of Sting. Jumbo Flapjack versus Kimala the Bouncer. Despite the name, Kimala is not based on Kamala, but rather the late Earthquake John Tenter. Both of these names are lacking, but Jumbo Flapjack always makes me laugh. And finally, Scorpion versus Astro. With a moveset based on Tiger Mask, I'm not sure why his name sucks in both versions. Scorpion reminds me of the Black Scorpion though, so Astro takes it for just not being anywhere near that gimmick. So with a score of 5-4, the USA wins this edition of The Name Game. The characters are beautifully rendered in classic Capcom style. There's no chance of confusion in character models when the screen fills up with them. Each sprite is colourful, unique, and looks great. Each wrestler gets their own mini entrance, and even cooler, when you select tag mode, both wrestlers come out together. Moves are rendered in an over-the-top arcade style that fits the presentation. This is certainly more of a beat-em-up than, say, WWF Raw, which was released at around the same time. However, it's still not Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. The gameplay lies somewhere in between, but if you've played any classic fighting game, you'll feel at home here. There are a few differences. Keeping with the wrestling format, there's only one round in each match, and to end the match you must get a pinfall or submission. You can also interact with the ring, climbing out of it to grab weapons, going up to the top rope, and of course bouncing off the ropes as well. These pro wrestling elements help to ground the game for pro wrestling fans, who would otherwise be playing an arcade-style beat-em-up with colourful characters. You can compete in single or team battle royal. I love the way that team is in quotation marks, but sadly you can't turn on your opponent as it would suggest. The Mega Drive version got rid of the team mode for some reason and replaced it with an exclusive deathmatch feature that would have been a fun addition to the NES or arcade versions. There's a single player mode of course, but as with just about any fighting game, the real fun is to be found competing against your friends. The music is one of the only areas where I feel the game is lacking, perhaps unfairly comparing it again to Street Fighter. Guile and Ryu's themes are classics that can't help but be hummed. Muscle Bomber's music is forgettable at best, with several of the stage tracks sounding quite jarring and downright bad. Muscle Bomber is a very good game, and there's not too much fault to be found with it. As a beat-em-up, it gets a very high score and comes recommended, but the Sasuke scale rates games on how good they are as wrestling games. So with that in mind, we give Muscle Bomber a very solid 3 Sasukes. So please remember to rate, like and subscribe. We would really appreciate it and it helps the channel grow. So until episode 4, sayonara.